Thanks, Vikash. That was really interesting for many of us to see, as you said, the length and breadth and the depth of this mission and the kinds of issues it addresses. So that's thanks for that presentation, because we don't get to see this very often here in Pune to really understand what is happening at the national stage or in some of us are working on projects here, but it's in that small box, and we don't see what's happening in the overall picture and where this project is going. And clearly, it's a multi-decade long project, and it's going to take the next 50-60 years to evolve, and it's going to evolve with people like you. So thanks for coming here and sharing this with us. We also have, of course, we've got architect P.K. Das with us, who's come just all the way from Bombay just to be with us today. P.K. Das is popularly known as an architect activist. His priority has been to establish a very close relationship between architecture and people by involving them in a participatory process, planning process, while critically responding to the cry for sustainable ecology. His wide spectrum of work includes organizing slum dwellers for better living and evolving affordable housing models, engaging in policy framework for public housing, reclaiming public spaces including developing waterfronts, protection and conservation of natural areas, re-envisioning parts of the city of Mumbai, along with an architectural practice involving urban planning, urban design, architecture, and interior design assignments across India. He has authored several books and publications and has delivered talks and lectures across the world. His work in the development of Mumbai's coastline and his slum rehabilitation projects have won him several national and international awards, including the first Urban Age Award instituted by the London School of Economics and Deutsche Bank, conferred to the Mumbai Waterfront Centre, of which Das is the chairperson. He has also been conferred with the prestigious First International Jane Jacobs Medal in 2016.
Yes, I've been cold too in this air-conditioned room, but I've also turned cold by the extensive presentation of Vikash Chandra with the magnitude of work and scale that's turned me cold. I hope we can warm up a bit now. I've been always wondering how to put a, headline up. Being a bad journalist, maybe. So I have many lines here, which probably introduces my paper or my talk this evening. But before I get onto that, thank you very much, Vinitha. She's run away. Kushru, thank you very much for the short introduction. And Prasanna, my friend, doing some great work in Pune. Thank you all for inviting me. I am particularly going to talk about the significance of collective intervention in order to bring about citywide transformation with the clear objective of achievement of sustainable ecology. But that, I think, is one of the most critical and significant priorities we have at an age of climate change adversities, catastrophe, in fact, that we're going to confront. To just give you a small shock, not less than 20% of Mumbai city, that means a lot, will be underwater in less than 100 years. And this is a clearly established scientific data if we don't slow down that process. So I think one of the primary objectives or responsibilities we carry with us in any work that we're doing, in any place, whatever be our engagements, the measure is, are we contributing towards that significant crisis and arresting that or slowing down that process of climate change? So that's probably a whole lot of things that I'm talking about. I will switch on to, I will take it through a project that we are right now grappling with. And it's through the root of that project, through the project profile and its explanation, I will be touching upon the various aspects of the topic that I talked about, the collective intervention and the sustainable ecology, and a citywide transformation that we're really aiming to bring about for the achievement of that objective. So in the year 2013, The citizens of Juhu, which is a small neighborhood in Mumbai, in the western suburbs of Mumbai, launched the Irla Nala movement, the Nallas. I think all of you are familiar with what a Nalla is. I'm sure Pune people are most familiar with it. For the conservation, reinvigoration, and reintegration of a 7.5 kilometer long Nalla that runs through the neighborhood of Juhu. Most of the over 300 kilometers of Nallas in Mumbai, that includes the Irla Nalla, were originally natural water courses of the estuary, or rivers connected to the sea and thereby to the tides. These water courses regulated groundwater level and assisted in dispersing the water from the land in case of heavy rain, right? So these were the kind of the geography and the topography of the city of Mumbai. Unfortunately, over the years, they've been abused, clearly, becoming waste and sewage debris drains which take the effluents out into the sea. And this is true about many, many cities, many coastal cities in particular. Sadly, the city government has channelized them by building impervious concrete walls along their edges and even concreting some of the river beds and the Nala beds, thus further severing the ecological and environmental attributes and separating them also from the people. Such example of concretization of river and river edges and their beds is no strange phenomena to us, in India at least. We've witnessed that in the city of Ahmedabad, and we're increasingly witnessing them in many, many cities across rivers, nallas, water channels, water courses, etc. At a time when the Irla Nala reinvigoration movement was launched in 2013, the municipal authorities wondered why this was important. Surely not because they had begun putting up these concrete walls on both sides and cleaning up the nallas as they thought would happen with the concretization. Also, the people living in Mumbai generally associate nallas, and so do most people anywhere in any of these cities where there are nallas, generally associate nallas with dirt, filth, and odor. Over the years, there is very little public knowledge of them being rivers and natural water courses that define the landscape of our cities. Battling such impediments, both of the mindset of the governments and the kind of knowledge that the public had about these natural features, battling such impediments, the movement continued. Comprehensive plans and implementation programs were created through active citizens' participation. Meetings were held in public spaces with posters, publications, booklets, books, and campaign material. Juhu Giri Pyar Se, taken from a colloquial slang of Dadagiri. I mean, most of you understand that in India, which means by coercive force. But here it's a little interpreted as a collective power of people of Juhu, with a bit of pyar se, means with a bit of love, and a Vision Juhu book publication communicating the project. The city officials could no longer ignore the gathered momentum of the movement, and the municipal commissioner finally approved the project 11 months later. Today, people in large numbers flock the redeveloped areas and along the Nalla. The Irla Nala reinvigoration plan advocating the Juhu vision plan. So the Nalla plan was not just, you didn't want me to shut up, right? Oh, let's come back. The Irla Nala reinvigoration plan was also a part of a larger Juhu vision plan. So it's not just the Nalla plan, but it's a plan of a neighborhood of Juhu, advocating the Juhu vision plan that covers an area of 4 square kilometers, focuses on cleaning and turning the waters of a polluted and much abused natural water course and its immediate precinct into a vibrant public space and a neighborhood forecourt, generating rich social, political, and environmental dividends. Although the neighborhood contains some open spaces, as many cities have and neighborhoods have, we have quite a number of these open spaces, but they're idiosyncratic, disconnected, and some of them are not even accessible to public. They are disparate in nature and function in isolation. But the Nalla itself physically weaves through the entire neighborhood as potentially a linear park, connecting various disparate spaces. Such networking of spaces realize the high networking potential of the social fabrics of different communities in Juhu, whether they were the slum dwellers or the fisher folk or the middle class communities or the upper class communities. All kinds of people and activities that happened in Juhu had the incredible potential of networking through the project of the Irla networking project. This is how the Irla Nala flows from the north end, which is the top of the Juhu neighborhood, and flows down to the south, meeting the sea at both points. And this is a small neighborhood with an airport in the center of that. It's 4 square kilometers. And you have the iconic Juhu beach to your left, which is represented by that yellow line. These are some of the slides of the initial plans that we prepared. I'll just run through briefly because I think we have very little time, and I'll sort of try and do it as short as I can. But this is significant, and what we're trying to do, these were lots of these drawings and posters and campaign material that were produced, is to try and start networking public spaces. These disparate, isolated places being knitted together. And by that, we start beginning to connect places. As I keep saying, it's about debarricading cities. It's about breaking down the multiple walls that we've built over the years between people and between places. Importantly, through the Irla Nala movement, we could generate an active, pulsating system of public spaces, including the Nalla, that would form the spine of Juhu, both socially, environmentally, and culturally. So here are some of the pictures of the movement with protests, marches. There was also the vulnerability of developers taking over some of these spaces and gardens along the Nalla for real estate exploitation, etc. And that continued. And as the top slide shows, before and after, that some of these concrete walls had already started being built. So unfortunately, we couldn't break them down. But it'd be wise to just give up these concrete walls and develop natural edges to our water courses and to regain and reclaim those symbiotic relationships between water, land, and people. And this is something very, very important for us to understand. And so here are just quick glimpses of some of these. So we built these walking and cycling tracks and landscapes. And we're going to be now, since it's Juhu, we're also going to be putting in about 40 life-size statues of the eminent Bollywood stars who lived in Juhu and are no more. And also the handprints of those who still continue to live. So it'll be quite it'll be just an attractive place for people. What used to be the filth and the backyard and the garbage dump and the stink is being turned into what I call is a neighborhood forecourt. And that's the transformation we're talking about through this. And that's how it sort of weaves through. Right. Now, I come to the next point, one of the points that I keep making about urbanization and city making. I borrow this term city making from our famous author. Anyway, I'll come to it in a minute. I have a very short memory of names. What we are deeply concerned about is the constant division of our cities into disparate fragments, both in social and spatial terms. Polarization of people and communities in terms of their religion, race, caste, class, faith, gender, nationality, you can carry on, is not seemingly, but is being realized more and more, is leading to social instability and tension. Indeed, our cities are producing and reproducing backyards of exclusion, discrimination, hatred, neglect, and abuse. Even natural habitats are being systematically destroyed, leading to increasing levels of social intolerance and climate catastrophe, as I mentioned earlier, thus undermining the very idea of cities and their sustainability. So cities are not just about physical entities. These are about the symbiotic relationship and sustainability of these relationships between nature and people. And that's what is critical. So it's not about projects. It's not about the concrete turnover that Vinita talked about. It's not about the sexy renderings of landscapes, but really regaining this symbiotic relationship. And what facilitates that, or what defeats that, has to be very carefully observed, which is very, very steadfastly being undermined by the guise of beautification projects, to be more sort of, as we keep hearing them. As these conflicts that dominate the city landscape, we are compelled to intervene. We are compelled to intervene collectively. And that is very important. How do we intervene to bring about change? How do we intervene to arrest this decline, this threat, this instability, this discrimination, and this abuse that continues to grow and expand? How do we intervene, particularly in the excluded, discriminated, and much abused backyards of people and places that are, in most instances, situated in the borders, edges, peripheries, and margins of cities? You will always realize that we keep pushing cities clean to the outskirts of dirt and dust. Slum dwellers evicted from the city to be pushed to the edges. Garbage being carried from city centers to the edges. TDR in Mumbai being carried from the city center to the edges. So the edges continue to be these dumping grounds of abuse, filth, and stink. And these are the places that pose the biggest challenge of sustainability and of integration, as I keep calling them. And how do we intervene in those places those are the margins, as I call them. The Irlalana and its immediate precinct is one such area to which we in Mumbai have turned our backs to over the years. As an Allah, which I explained to you earlier. This is the kind of margins that I talked about. This is the kind of pictures we see over and over again across cities in India, right? And this was not just the margins of Mumbai, this is the heart of Mumbai. Waterfronts turned as the backyards of the city. Water edges, natural flora and fauna, the mangroves, the wetlands, the creeks being destroyed for real estate expansion and interest, etc., etc. And these slides can just go on and be quite generic to most cities in India. But if there is one thing that I have learned, that I have to state, being the most important learning from my living and working in Mumbai, it is the need for collective intervention in the current trend of exclusionary urban development with an objective of achieving social and environmental equity and justice for all. That is the bottom line. Also, as a necessary condition, each individual intervention, mind you, this is extremely important, and I think you also, Mr. Vikas, touched upon this point. Also, as a necessary condition, each individual intervention would have to be linked to other democratic rights struggles and other similar and significant movements, building networks of interventions. So it's not about a singularity. It's about collectivization and collectives. It's about building networks of interventions. If I'm intervening, she's doing so, he is doing that. Can we hold hands together? Can we understand what connects them? Can we build this network of interventions towards bringing about a citywide transformative change? And through that process, evolving an alternate vision of our city. This is what is important. An alternate vision of our city, which is otherwise wretchedly real estate oriented. Its material, its concrete, its turnover of construction is measured as a measure of success of urbanization. Damn it, it's counterproductive to the idea of urbanization. It's counterproductive to the very idea of building cities and making cities. It's counterproductive to the very idea of social and environmental sustainability above all. It is with these objectives that I consider building relationships collectively between people and with nature as an important mission. This is the essence of my talk, focused on an understanding of these relationships, and networks of interactions, particularly those that develop in the process of collective interventions. The new challenges do keep cropping up in this experience of collectivization. It's not a static process. It's a highly dynamic process. And that's precisely about what is called a democratic process, which is evolving and dynamic. Collected by citizens on demands pertaining to social and environmental justice and how they contribute to the larger interest of sustainability of cities. I like to view cities from social and environmental perspective and understand how the two together constitute a necessary condition and their persuasion a means for the achievement of a higher state of urbanization. I'm at this point not getting into the discussion of what urbanization truly means. I'm suspending that, but I look upon the process of urbanization as being separate and independent of the process of making cities. Sadly so, even though city building and city making are incredible means for the achievement of a higher state of urbanization, sadly they have been severed and have to be understood separately, therefore, to be able to be put together in future. But I'm not getting into that. That's another subject that I talk about quite extensively. Thus, a sustainable ecology of cities is possible when we successfully combine environmental and socioeconomic dimensions equally in the plans and actions that we pursue. As a matter of fact, it is the extent of their integration and inclusion that form a criterion by which we evaluate the value of our work and engagements. That's how I look upon it. And that's how we should start considering to measure the success and the value of our work and engagements. It is for this reason that I would like to present very quickly and briefly a network of movements, 20 years, 22 years, and continuing, that provide a historical perspective to the Irla Nala movement. As I said, Irla Nala is not an independent, isolated example, and its position in the larger context of the city and its relationship with other movements. Oh my God, this is something I'll just quickly brush through. You could see that the middle one is the Irla Nala. The second one from your left is the Irla Nala Reinvigoration Project, which is the reinvigoration of the Mumbai's water courses, etc. And that came about, got connected to a whole lot of movements for reclaiming public spaces, movements in Mumbai, which began with the waterfronts, reclaiming the waterfronts of Mumbai, and I have a whole list of movements and projects that sort of preceded the Irla Nala movement. There are about 12 different projects before that, beginning 23 years ago, and continuing to a Vision Juhu expanding public spaces idea, which then takes you from the idea of a neighborhood-based city development to envisioning cities. So that's the scale that you were talking about right in the beginning, Vikash, when you sort of talked about the scaling and the connectivity. So it's not, and I'm just very quickly going through why I'm showing you this. This is just not a theoretical idea. This is evolved from the experiences of interventions and movements. And these connections then sort of really strengthened each other in Mumbai and supported each other enormously to carry on, and it just carries on beyond individuals and collectives to much larger organizations. And so we have 23 years back, the Juhu Beach Restoration Plan leading on in 1996 to 97 projects to 2000 to 2001 to publications to Gateway of India to waterfronts to mud flats in Suri to, you have a whole sort of big list of projects up to 2018 where we are pursuing the idea of the Nallas, their reinvigoration and integration. I'm sorry, it's just too, I can't go through each of these projects, but the idea is what I'm talking about. The idea is this big one of networking, of integration, and of supporting each other. These various projects that are born out of citizens' movements in which I participated are limited to public housing, open spaces, and environment. It is the constant and deliberate erosion of public spaces, the denial of access to housing to vast numbers of people, and the rampant destruction of the natural areas and the environment which Mumbai witnesses so much that have compelled me to engage with these issues and participate in the various movements that I talked about in this list. Now, this is something very important. Very often, we find ourselves absorbed into zones of comfort and complacence, engaging in issues and places that have developed or achieved exclusivity. We go into an upper class area, we still improve the streets there. I came through a drive into this hall from the hotel which I stayed, and the Google showed not the main road but through some by lanes. And I was just thinking, these are the areas that needs to be intervened, not the main streets. Fine, they're important. I'm not saying they're not important. But can we get into these places where the public streets have turned into the public spaces of those communities who live in these small little houses with big families and joint families? Can we intervene? Can we move away from our zones of comfort and complacence, engaging in issues and places that have developed or achieved exclusivity? Engagement in such places that are most often individual and disparate drive us to carrying out and limited to beautification and decoration through embellishments. This is what our governments want us to do. Believe me, the beautification of traffic islands, the embellishments of the barricades between the the footpaths and the roads, and the multiple barricades that we seemingly building across cities have to be overcome. But to get out and engage with situations of instability and discomfort, dealing with the invisible yet perceived barriers across city landscapes and their unification in order to bring about structural change in the way we deal with urban planning and design is indeed challenging. And this is significant. It's not about one little project, though important it is. Does that critically question the mainstream mindset to planning? Does the beautification of the footpaths challenge the idea of motorized transportation? Does it bring up the questions of reducing road areas to increasing walk areas? Does it talk about one-ways? Does it talk about many lifestyle changes issues which are cultural, social, and dominant over discourses by the privileged? We know that through our experience of the Equal Streets movement in Mumbai, the car lobbies would not let equal streets happen successfully, or expanding footpaths, or turning areas into pedestrian zones. So these are the challenges. Now, going on from here, I will cut short to just three issues or three ideas that come from the Irla Nala and the various other struggles that I talked about, and which I think could be interesting means for intervention in bringing about this big change that we're really talking about. And the first, which is close to my heart and to many here who are urban planners, architects, urban designers, and so on and so forth, is the issue of urban planning and design, which I've been claiming ought to be a right like any other right. Right to food, right to shelter, right to civic rights, to every other right. Urban planning and design ought to be a right. Planning and architecture are an effective democratic tool of social change, an instrument for mobilizing collective movements. This is what is significant about it. It's an incredible tool to mobilize people, to bring together people, to build those collectives that I talked about, to networking. Cities are not spaces for competition, nor for individual and disparate efforts. To me, they are a fantastic opportunity for forging collective and cooperative effort. Larger public participation and engagement of people's organizations in the development process truly helps develop a city, and planning and architecture should integrate with it for enabling social change and achieving development justice. This is how I see urban planning and design strength. For me, it is urban planning and design that provides incredible power for the achievement of the objective of unification of people, places, and nature. It is for this reason that I've been arguing that participation in urban planning and design need to be considered a right. It's not about the municipal commissioner calling 10 architects shortlisted, empaneled. It's about the discussion of urban planning from its inception with the larger public and engagement, public engagement. That is what we need to bring about. A paradigm shift in the way we practice and pursue urban planning, design, and architecture. It is for this reason that I've been arguing that this ought to be a right, and that popularization and democratization of architecture, urban planning, and urban design is indeed therefore important, whose responsibility vests on architects, planners, and designers. So we have a much bigger role, friends, not drawing and beautifying and intervening to change places, but intervening to spread the knowledge, to popularize the knowledge and the skills of urban planning, architecture, and design. And that is the significant responsibility that we carry on, and we must carry on. Otherwise, who else will popularize it? Who else will do that? Mind you, urbanization committees on housing, etc., include doctors and lawyers, not architects. So who's responsible? We architects. We need to popularize the strength of this effort. We can plan cities taking into account existing. Now, this is something that I talked about in the UN Habitat Conference in Quito in the plenary session. That actually we can plan cities taking into the brownfield projects in particular. When we're talking about brownfield projects and not greenfield projects, we can plan cities taking into account existing land occupation patterns, particularly slums and informal sectors, and many more backyards of abuse and discrimination, rather than cause displacements and neglect them due to the imposition of land use plans and patterns that are based on skewed planning standards and vested political interests, right? In Mumbai, we experienced this. When the DP was being formulated, they slapped all the open spaces requirement of the DP on slums. Then there were middle class rights organizations who moved to the High Court to say slums cannot be redeveloped on open spaces reservation. And the open spaces reservations that existed beyond the slums were turned into housing and other development sites. So, these phenomena have to be understood. We must re-envision our cities on the basis of unification of the disparate parts and the dismantling of the many walls that have been built over the years. Achieving contiguity through unbarricading spaces will enable the building of self-supporting structures of harmony and resilience. Natural areas and assets too must form an integral aspect of city planning and design programs. The development plan of Mumbai always kept out the natural areas and put it as a block called NA, no development zone. And do you know what the ratio of the Mumbai's natural areas and open spaces are? It's 200 square kilometers out of a city which is 480 square kilometers. Close to 200 square kilometers are hills, forests, creeks, nallas, beaches, etc. And the meager reservation of open spaces constitutes almost, as I keep saying, 50% of the city. And all we did ever till now, till the last DP, was fight over the exploitation of the 240 square meters buildable area, leaving out the 240 square meters of vital natural areas and assets. And now, for the first time in the DP, after a lot of struggle, they have been separated out of the NDZs and have been earmarked as NA, natural areas. And we've carried out extensive mapping of those areas to put them onto the DP maps to ensure that the edges are not, again, encroached upon. I now come on to the second aspect very quickly, which I call the neighborhood-based city planning. The IRLA project is a demonstration of the importance of neighborhood-based planning and design for the preparation of the city's development plans and projects. Such an approach facilitates local people's active participation in matters concerning their own area, which they know the best, while influencing cities' planning and development decisions. Through a neighborhood-based development approach, it is possible to decentralize and localize projects. This is very important. Decentralize and localize projects. Thus breaking away from the monolithic planning and design ideas that are disconnected from most people. Master plans for cities are generally top-down models drafted by elite group of designers that fail to engage with citizens of their ideas, inclusive of their ideas. And we saw that even in the case of Mumbai. A French firm was invited to prepare the development plan of Mumbai. They did so, but there was such an outcry, the government was forced to then drop that DP and terminate the contract of the French planning agency. So this is another way of looking at now cities, brownfield cities in particular. With localized projects, the planning of cities will hopefully become a bottom-up process with participation of all the people. Importantly, neighborhood scale work is more collaborative in approach to the city and placemaking. For citizens, such projects allow the immediate reclamation, redesign, and reprogramming of public spaces within their localities. So I'll just very quickly go through 5, 6, 7 neighborhood projects very quickly, just as images. Before, after. Before, after. These are clear demonstration of citizens' movements and interventions in largely ecological sensitive zones, addressing the issues of natural areas and people's response with it, evolving a new way of life and a social and cultural fabric around these public spaces. We have by now done about 10 kilometers of waterfronts in Mumbai, which are in the domain of the local resident citizens, also maintained by them on a day-to-day basis, along with the municipal corporation now. This is Bandstand, that was Carter Road. This is the Land's End Hill, where the hill had been devastated by a hotel, the Land's End Hotel, and a long battle of public interest litigation up to the Supreme Court got this land back to the people, and we restored the hill and built an amphitheater and a cultural square that is the first and the only cultural square on the waterfronts of Mumbai, and Mumbai being a waterfront city. We redesigned the precinct of the Gateway of India, debarricaded the garden that occupied most of that space, opened up an open plaza, the Juhu Beach restoration project, the mud flats in Siuri and the boardwalks, the fishing villages of Versova, Juhu, the Irla Nala project, the forestation project across neighborhoods as a spine that could walk through. These are pictures of Juhu. Along the Irla Nala, we were developing this idea of urban forests, the parks and gardens, the Kefi Azmi Udyan. We have the Kishore Kumar Bagh, we have the Vijay Tendulkar Rang Manch, and so on and so forth. So this is just a glimpse of that, the connected picture of public spaces and neighborhood-based development. I come to my last point, which is evolving a plan for transformative citywide change. And here I would like to say that Mumbai, as by now you've understood, has a network of water channels and water courses that aid the natural stormwater drainage of the city. The city authorities are apathetic towards their protection, conservation, and integration with the city's development plan. Instead, these assets are merely looked upon to maximize construction and to accommodate real estate interests. The Ilanala initiative addresses the abuse and the exclusion of the 300 kilometers of the water courses that includes 4 rivers in the city that had been turned into nallas or drains over the years. In fact, people in Mumbai didn't know till the 2013, is it, Sharad, the floods of Mumbai, or 16, that there were 4 rivers in the city of Mumbai. I mean, such was the situation. And look at this kind of 482 square kilometers total area of Mumbai, 149 kilometers of coastline, 16 kilometers of beaches, 40 kilometers of rivers, 9 square kilometers of creeks, nallas, and so on and so on and so forth. For the first time, we did a mapping of the natural areas of Mumbai, not the corporation. For the first time, we did a mapping of the open spaces of Mumbai. For the first time, we did the mapping of the slums of Mumbai. For the first time, we did the mapping of the Mahada land in Mumbai. Even Mahada didn't have a record and a map of its own land, which is the biggest land owning agency of Mumbai, owning over 2,000 hectares of land, being open to vandalism that could easily address the issues of creation of shortfall in affordable housing in the city of Mumbai, which is identified to be about 7 lakhs, etc. So these are the kind of tremendous kind of, potential and the richness of the natural areas that Mumbai has. The Juhu beach, the creeks. Also, it is important to reiterate that Irla Nala movement brings to light the continuing degradation of the vital 140 square kilometers of natural areas of the city, its mangroves, wetlands, creeks, saltpan rivers, lakes, beaches, hills, and forests. Sadly, the city has turned its back to this vast physically and it turned its back both physically and metaphorically to these areas, leading to their rampant destruction and degradation. Our central objective is the conservation of these vital natural assets, the integration with the neighborhoods and the city, expanding public spaces, both in physical and democratic terms, expanding tree cover, popularizing and demystifying the planning process for effective participation, and promoting the idea of neighborhood-based city planning. The Irla Nala Reinvigoration Project will model a paradigm shift in understanding of Mumbai's ecology and build in a sustainable manner with nature and its benefits to improve the equity and the quality of life of all Mumbaikars. I will very quickly sort of conclude. Now imagine a scenario where Mumbaikars have easy access to over 600 kilometers of landscaped walkways and cycling tracks and open spaces along the watercourses that intermingle and interweave through the various parts of the city's suburbs and the city and its urban fabric. This is the overarching vision that has manifested itself in a tangible pilot project, the Irla Nala Reinvigoration Movement. The current mindset of planning of cities has to be challenged. This is Mumbai's watercourses. Can you see that? We all go to Venice. We appreciate those. Look at this, the numbers of watercourses. 300 kilometers, kilometers of watercourses across neighborhoods in this city. And that is what we are talking about, turning them. The Mithi is 18 kilometers, Oshiwara River is 7 kilometers, Dahisar 12 kilometers, Poishar 3 kilometers, besides the 300 kilometers of major nalas, most of which were the original watercourses of the estuary. And this is the Open Mumbai plan that we finally did in the Open Mumbai exhibition that was open for nearly a year in the city, where most elected representatives visited, people visited. We were talking about this integration. The red lines demonstrated the kind of ecological, social, and cultural networking that was possible in order to re-envision the city of Mumbai. The current mindset of planning of cities has to be challenged. Sustainable ecology and environment has to be the central aspect of city development plans. Undoubtedly, without mincing words, we have no alternative but to address the issues of climate change and environment and ecology. Our mission is to facilitate the rejuvenation and integration of open spaces, the natural areas, and the wider city. So all I can say now in the last para, incidentally, this is a huge project with many, many collaborations. As I keep saying, cities are an incredible opportunity of collaborative endeavor. You have Javed Akhtar Sahab, who was then a member of parliament, who contributed his entire MP-led fund to the Irla Nala project that made it possible. He contributed 24 crores to this project. Shabana Azmi, when she was the member of parliament, contributed to the Bandra waterfronts projects. Dilip Kumar Saab contributed, and so forth. I mean, it was all public funds, developed by public agencies, contracted by Mahada or PWD or BMC as stipulated by the parliament for carrying out the projects under the MP-led scheme. The project was monitored and visioned by the residents collectively. Accounts were being pasted in public spaces for public scrutiny. And today even the maintenance is looked after them. And we as architects have been at one of these, get-togethers, providing not just honorary service, but actually in many ways funding this project equally. No commission to draw from. So in conclusion, may I say, can we re-envision our city with streams of open spaces and water, defining a new geography? Can we restore these nallas to their past glory and contribute towards the ecological regeneration of these natural assets? Can we simultaneously break away from the large monolithic spaces and geometric structures of parks and gardens into fluid streams of linear open spaces, meandering, modulating, and negotiating varying city terrains? Can we redesign nallas to be linear parks? This way, a new structure of open spaces and water courses would relate to and integrate with many more areas and people across neighborhoods and city, thus being the focus of our placemaking effort. These are some of the city transformative ideas that the Illa Nala project evokes. Many thanks to all of you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much.